Hello guys, first I want to make a little disclaimer. So what I want to say is this video may become a little bit longer because I'm doing this without or little preparation. If you want to watch short videos on how to become a Michelangelo in 5 minutes, go and watch a tutorial of a professional YouTuber. They make the videos especially for that. So I'm a professional developer and I don't have a time to cut, edit and do whatever other guys are doing. So go ahead and watch a tutorial. I just don't want to give you a solution. I don't want to give you a fish. I'm giving you a way to fish. I'm gonna show you how I'm fishing so you can learn that. Yeah, so this is the value of this tutorial, even though it's a little bit longer. The value would be the thought process. I'm not hiding anything, I'm not editing, I'm not hiding anything. No steps skipped. I think this is the most valuable thing of these videos. Of course, the rest of the videos, which are short, also they have their values, but as I said, they give you the complete solution, step by step. It's an instruction, not the thought process. Some of them, of course. So go and watch somebody else's video if you expect to learn how to become a developer in 5 minutes. Okay, so that's it. Having said that, let's have fun. Actually, the last time what we did is we created one application. We created one application in which we had IdentityServer4 plus ASP.NET Identity. Projects, change directory trash, change directory quick start, change directory source ls. So let me see here, what do we have? So this is the application we have been working on in the previous tutorial. If you haven't watched this, or if you're a novice to this channel, you can to this actually not only channel but to this playlist, you can watch the previous tutorials. Some of them are on English, so you can watch it. The last ones are on English. So first, ID server ASP.NET identity. What we want actually is to have the identity server 4 plus the features of ASP.NET identity. And we actually achieved this goal in the previous tutorial. So we have registration, we have everything what the ASP.NET can offer, plus everything what the Identity Server 4 can offer, but not fully, because the template which we use from Identity Server 4 actually gives us the starting point, but it's using the SQLite. I don't want to use SQLite, and also it gives us the in-memory configuration of the identity server. I want the configuration of the identity server to be into the database, and not any database, but LocalDB, and later on I'm gonna switch to MSSQLServer. Also, I want all the tables of ASP.NET Identity to be into the same database. So this is what we are doing today. This is what we are gonna do. Let me show you the tutorial which I'm gonna use. As I said, I'm doing this without or little preparation, so using EntityFrameworkCore for configuration. I'm also not hiding the dead ends. So for example, or errors. I can start doing something, I may hit the dead end, so I'm gonna go back and take another way. So this is how the development process actually goes. I know it's not scientific. You should always show only the fruitable roads, but as I said, the thought process is more important in this case. Okay, so using EntityFramework Core for configuring and operational data. What we did is this one. In the previous example, in the previous tutorial, we allowed all the features of the ASP.NET Core identity. And now what we are gonna do is we are going to use a LocalDB to store the data from ASP.NET Core Identity plus configuration and everything necessary for IdentityServer4. IdentityServer4 Entity Framework. I'm going to put the links to everything what I'm using into the description, maybe the comments as well. So first things first, let me start the Visual Studio here. Let me see where I am. Migrations, I don't care about that. Projects, trash, quick start, and I'm gonna start my solution. I haven't checked if I committed the changes from the last time, so this is what I'm gonna do right now. Hopefully this video is not gonna be very long. I also don't like to create long videos, and I will find my path through the magical forest very quickly, but we'll see. We can learn from the errors of other people as well, because we don't have time in our life to make all the errors. So this is also helpful. Team Explorer, let me see changes. There are no changes. Perfect. So I have committed everything. So let me close this. Let me close this. Let me close this. Let me close this. And let's start from scratch. So finally I got this. Let me check if I'm recording. I hopefully do. So first, appsettings.json. What I need to do actually is change the data source. Instead of having this, now I have to have a LocalDB. Where can we see this LocalDB? We can go, for example, in this tutorial, in this project. Look at the application settings. So we should have something like server, LocalDB, blah, 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 something like that. And we'll name the database which we want to connect to. So what I'm gonna do is not this one, app settings. Let me first copy this app settings because I want to have it. I'm gonna call this dist because otherwise, look what happens. Actually, distribution. When the name actually starts with this one, with app settings. Yes, do it. App settings. Look, it became actually a child of the app settings, so that's why I'm gonna rename it. I'm gonna rename it like this. I don't like this, which Visual Studio does, so that's why I'm doing it this way. Now I gotta change this connection string. How can we get the connection string from this tutorial? Actually, this is how we can get the connection string. This is what I'm talking about. I'm showing you the sources which I'm using. The references will be under the video into the description. LocalDB, MSSQL, data, identity server, quick start. I don't care about that, but what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna name this database after the project which I'm using right now, which is first ID SRV ASP net identity. That's it. Okay, so potentially now a database with such name will be created in my LocalDB, and we will see it. How we are gonna see that? Going to MS SQL Server Management Studio, we can look at all the databases just to make sure that I don't have such a database. I know the name is a little bit long. I don't like such a long names, but it's descriptive enough. So what happened to my MS server? Did I start it? Yeah, I did. So connect to LocalDB. Let's look at the databases. And I have database which start with IdentityServer4, quick start, EntityFramework4. And okay, so I don't have such a database. IdentityServer4, quick start, first ID server, and after that identity. This is the name of the project. Actually represents what I did. First, I created a template with IdentityServer4, and after that I added the features of the ASP.NET identity. Okay, so this is the first thing to do. Now, what else do we have to do now? Once we change the connection string, we gotta go to the startup and make sure that our ASP.NET identity is gonna use right now SqlServer. Look at this. These two statements, default UI, default UI coming from ASP.NET. These two code snippets are dedicated to ASP.NET identity. So this is the magic. This is the middleware magic. I don't like this magic too much, but whatever. In the request pipeline, in the middleware actually, I have to change use SQLite. SQLite should be replaced right now. I'm gonna comment this, copy, paste it, and change it. Of course, I have to make sure that I have SqlServer installed here. So let me uncomment this. How can we get this information? We can go, for example, in this first ASP.NET identity, for which I'm using SQL, and look at the startup and compare. Okay, so here we go. The very same code snippets, but for one project which is using LocalDB. All we have to do is change and say use SqlServer. Before doing that, of course, we have to have installed SqlServer. In order to do that, actually, you can check here. What do you have to install? .NET Add Package Microsoft.EntityFrameworkCore.SqlServer. I probably did this before for this project, but let me make sure. So let me open the prosh file, C# prosh file, and take a look. Identity Microsoft Entity Framework Core SQL Server. So I have it. I don't have to add this package to the project. I have it already, so I can use it. That's all we have to make sure. If you don't have SQL Server, of course you have to execute this command on the command line into the folder of the project. Why do I have two here? Quick start, what is that? Okay, so actually I like to have only one, so that's why I'm gonna only one PowerShell open right now. So that's why I'm gonna close this one and change directory here. So pvd, where I am, project trash CreateIdentityServer first identity server ASP.NET Core identity. So whatever needs to be run, I'm gonna run it here. I don't wanna, yeah, I can clear, of course, but it doesn't matter. Okay, database scheme changes and using anti-framework migrations. Now, before I do this change and switch actually from in-memory to SQL Server for the IdentityServer4, first I have to make sure that ASP.NET identity is working. Service add-on blah 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 blah. So if you look at the migrations, they have been generated into the template migrations, they have to be generated for SQLite. Not gonna, yeah, why not? Let's open the code and see. Let's make a search for SQLite auto increment. Look at this. See, the script which is generated for the migration actually has been specifically created to SQLite. So that's why I don't need these migrations. But just for any case, what I'm gonna do here is gonna go to the project and just zip the entire folder with the data so I can go back. Zip, and I'm gonna say what? I'm not gonna say anything. Actually, SQLite. This is what I'm gonna say, just for any case. Of course, I know I can go back using the source control management system, but I feel comfortable like doing that. Okay, so I'm gonna delete all the migrations because I'm gonna generate right now new migrations, especially for ASP.NET Identity, which is not shown here into the tutorial, but we have enough information just to conclude and make analogy so we can do the same thing. Look at here how the migrations are built, actually are done. If you look at here, you'll figure out how can you create a migration for a given DB context and put it in a given folder. Data migrations, IdentityServer, persistent grant. Okay, so I'm hacking here. As I said, I'm hacking my way through the magical forest with a machete. So I'm collecting data and information from different sources. The most important is the thought process. As I said, when I read this article, I came to the conclusion that actually I can very easily switch the SQLite to LocalDB, and I can put identity, ASP.NET Identity, into the same LocalDB, even though the template which comes from IdentityServer4 actually is using SQLite. Let me show you that. If you go back, you'll see here ISP ID users. So we'll see how we are gonna do that. Right now, all I care about is just switching ASP.NET Identity to use LocalDB. Even though it's not populated, I don't care because right now, not right now, but in the previous tutorial, I allowed all the features of ASP.NET Identity so I can register users. For example, Bob, Alice, I don't need to seed the database with something. Okay, let me look at Entity Framework Store, ApplicationDbContext. So this is very important. When I create the migration, let me look at here. I change this startup services. So I'm using these helpers here. Startup.cs. I have a roadmap. So those are my thoughts, what I have to do. Config get connection string, default connection, use SQL we have to redo the migrations. This is the bottom line. .NET add package Microsoft.EntityFrameworkCore.SqlServer if it's not added. Tool install global .NET Entity Framework, which will allow us to create migrations, but I have done this many times already on this computer, so even if I do it, global is gonna tell me that it's already there. Not very well visible, but tool .NET Entity Framework is already installed. And .NET add package Microsoft.EntityFrameworkCore.Design, which is again necessary for creating the migrations. I do have this as well. I have added somewhere Microsoft.EntityFrameworkCore.Design down the line. If you haven't, you can go back and watch previous tutorials, whatever. So now this is what is necessary to be done, and now I'm gonna do the .NET Anti-Framework migrations at create initial create identity schema -c ApplicationDbContext -o output into data migration. See, it's a context. But as I said, you can figure out by looking this tutorial. Okay. I can actually put all these comments into the description. Yeah, this is probably what I'm gonna do as well. So .NET-EF migrations at CreateIdentitySchema. Why I'm naming it this way, if you look at the previous migrations which are coming with the template, you will see the template, the migration was called like that. So I'm doing the very same thing. CreateIdentitySchema -c ApplicationDb context -o data migrations. Let's look at the ApplicationDB context. Here we go. It has nothing interesting going on here. Base on module creating builder, and that's it. So as I said, nothing too interesting here. I haven't saved this one. This startup actually we were used from another project just to look at what we have to change to use the SQL server. So now what I'm expecting to happen when I create this migration and apply this migration to the database is for database to be created and ASP.NET Identity to work with this database. That's all. I'm switching the databases. I haven't worked on the IdentityServer4 configuration yet. So now let me do this migration and we will see that into the folder migrations we will get data. We don't have migrations right now. Why don't I have migrations? Yeah, because probably it's empty. So that's why the smart quotation marks Visual Studio doesn't show me anything. Migration. Okay, so let me execute this command and get the migrations, which are generated for SQL Server this time because the connection string is changed and .NET Platform is smart enough to figure out that, and the tools are smart enough actually to figure out that the migration should be built for SQL Server. SQL LocalDB actually, but it's a lightweight version of MSSQLLocalDB. Okay, so done. Undo this action, AntiFramework migrations remove. Okay, so if we look at now, we have the folder migration and we have 3 files which are organized by Visual Studio like that. ApplicationDbContext model and CreateIdentitySchema. Okay, so that's it. Now we have to update the database and that's it. That's all we have to do in order to switch the database. If you run the application and try to log in or do something, you will get error. Let me do that actually, because sometimes Visual Studio just doesn't even require you to do something special. Look at this now. Debug, start the application, and look, the identity server should be working right now. This is our STS security token service which we're building. What is left to be done is put the MSSQLServer into a container. Actually, we don't have to do that, but put our data into this container, containerize our application. So here we go. To see the claims, you click here, you get the login from identity, from ASP.NET Identity. But if you try to log in, see what you're gonna get now. There is no database, there is nothing. So that's why it's gonna tell you a database operation failed while processing the request. SQL exception cannot open database. IdentityServer4 quick start. First ID server, after that ASP.NET Identity. Requested by the login failed, login blah blah. If I hit this button, it's gonna create a database, it's gonna everything is gonna work. The migration will be applied, the tables will be created, but I'm gonna do it manually. Applying existing migrations for ApplicationDbContext may resolve this issue, of course. There are migrations for ApplicationDB context that have not been applied to the database. Yes, this is the migration which I did. If you pay attention on the template, on the migrations from the template, they're for 2018, so very old migrations. I'm gonna show you that actually. That's why I didn't delete anything, because sometimes I remember that I gotta go back. Look at this now. Come on. I know. Okay, so data, migrations. Look at this, 2018, January 9th. Create identity scheme. That's why I name it my migrations. The same time to be as close as possible to the tutorials and to the template. Okay, so that's why. Apply migrations in Visual Studio. You can use the package manager console. I'm not gonna do that. Update database. Alternatively, you can blah blah blah. Okay, so this is exactly what I'm gonna do. If there are migrations, actually you can apply this migration by doing this. And also I'm gonna add a link to migrations overview, how you do migrations, getting started, blah 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 blah, .NET-EntityFramework migrations, add initial create. This is what we did just a minute ago. .NET-EntityFramework database update. The migrations will be applied to the database. The database will be updated. Apply migrations. Here you can read more. .NET-EntityFramework migration script, how to create actually the migrations. For the production database, they recommend you first create the script, so you examine the script. But for the development, you don't need the script. You can trust the migration builder actually and create directly the database. So I don't care right now. I'm starting a new project, so that's why I'm gonna do it this way. Okay, so I'm gonna stop this application right now, because if I don't stop it and try to execute this, I get error sometimes. So that's why, just to be on the safe side, to stay on the safe side, this is what I'm gonna do now. I'm gonna say .NET-EntityFramework database update. The migration will be picked up and will be applied to the database. After that, we'll open the database and see it. Build started, and as I said, when we run the application, actually we can supply with extra argument, which is /seed, and it's gonna be seeded by Bob and Alice, but I don't want to do that actually. I don't need it anymore, since I allow it all the features of ASP.NET Identity. I can register the user. Okay, so that's done. .NET-EntityFramework update. Now if I start the application, we'll see that even if I try to log in, it's gonna work now. Debug, start new instance. What I'm wondering, yeah, let me first show you the database, and after that we will start the application. So where is my SSMS Security SQL Server Management Studio? It's running right now, and we will see the database have been created. The tables also have been created. Database, our database is called this way. Okay, this is our database. So tables, we take a look at the tables. Here we go. And users, we don't have users here. We didn't seed it with anything. If I run the application with argument seed, actually we will see that it's gonna be populated. No users, no Bob, no Alice. I don't care. I don't need to see the database. If I need, I know how to do it. Let me show you that actually. As far as I remember, in this project, in this template, in the program, we have here we go, seed arguments, blah 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 blah, seeding database. So we could eventually see the database, but I'm not gonna do that, which is very good. So host terminated unexpectedly, but create host builder. Here we go. If we say .NET run and space, and after that say /seed, actually the database will be seeded. I'm not gonna do that, as I said. So now let me start the application. Debug, Start new instance. And now if I try to log in, it doesn't matter which login I'm using. Right now I'm gonna use the identity, the ASP.NET Identity login. It's gonna tell me that there is no such a user, but it's not gonna throw an error, exception, invalid login attempt, and it allows me to register, or it's gonna lead me to forgot your password page where I can put my email address and I'm gonna receive one email with a link which allows me to change the password. I'm gonna do that as I said right now. So now the first things first. So we created the database and we have the tables for ASP.NET Identity. So we finished with the transfer of ASP.NET Identity in the middleware. This is all we had to do here in the startup. Now let's continue. Now if we go back to this tutorial, which I showed to you already, all the steps necessary to use for configuration of the IdentityServer4, the database, all the steps are described here. .NET add package IdentityServer Entity Framework. This is the package which we need actually to install right now. Let me look at my notes just for any case. Database operation failed while processing, blah, 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 blah. Okay, do this when the application .NET add package IdentityServer Identity Framework. Okay, so .NET add package IdentityServer4 Entity Framework. We need the libraries, we need the tools which will allow IdentityServer4 to store all the necessary data into the database, and that's why we are gonna add this package. If we look at right now, we'll see that we don't have such package here. Maybe we need a little bit more time, but IdentityServer4, ASP.NET Identity, that's all we have. And notice this, it's version 4.0.0, but we don't have IdentityServer4, this one, package IdentityServer Entity Framework. So let me do that now. And hopefully this is not gonna throw an error. If it does, thanks God, we'll see how to solve this issue. Okay, now .NET add package IdentityServer4 Entity Framework. Okay, so we can work with the database. Writing blah 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 blah. Let's see what happens. In the previous tutorials, actually, we got one error saying that we need to update our IdentityServer4 to version 4.04, because right now what has been installed is IdentityServer 4.04. Look at this. But we'll see if this works. Otherwise, we just will update the packages. Let me show you something. Manage NuGet packages. We'll see that all of the packages actually have updates. Almost all of them. This is because the template is old and the versions are old as well. See, IdentityServer4 ASP.NET Identity. This actually has a newer version. EntityFramework4, Microsoft, blah 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 blah. But I'm not gonna update the packages right now. I'm gonna do it later. Let me get first this working. Okay, so now what is interesting is that this template offers all the configuration to come from the configuration CS file. Here we have our clients, our resources, API scopes, whatever. All we want to do now is transfer this config file to the database and allow the IdentityServer4 to work with the database. This is the most important link between the ASP.NET Identity and IdentityServer4, because it tells the IdentityServer4 to use the users which are coming from ASP.NET Identity. But these 3 lines of code we definitely have to change. So I'm gonna comment out this right now and follow the tutorial here, which says .NET. Okay, we have added already this, and look at this, what it says: data scheme changes and use the anti-framework migrations. Actually, this is the most important. It says IdentityServer4 AntityFramework implements the required stores and services using the following DB context. Configuration DB context, used for configuration data such as client, resources, and scopes. Persisted grant DB context, used for temporary operational data such as authorization codes and refresh tokens. These contexts are suitable for any EntityFramework Core compatible relational database. You can find, and right now we are doing this with LocalDB, which easily can be replaced with MSSQLServer. You can find these contexts, their entities, and IdentityServer4 stores that use them in this package storage. And you can find the extension methods to register them in your identity server in IdentityServer4.EntityFramework, which we will do now. Okay, we already installed this package, NuGet package, so let me get down. Look at this now. This is what we have to do in our startup. So these two parts, these two code snippets are for ASP.NET Identity. We have finished with that already. But now, this is what we have to do. We have to add migrations, assembly, get type. Of course, we have to add the necessary NuGet packages using system reflection. Migration assembly. This is simply because the migrations are in another project, which we installed with NuGet. After that, constring. We are not gonna do that simply because we have our connection string already into our application settings, so we don't need that. And what we need to do, we don't need actually to add test users, Alice and Bob, but what we need is to add these code snippets and find the proper place for them. Look at this now. Instead of in memory, right now we are gonna use this one. I'm a little bit surprised that it did it this way, but now instead of connection string, we are using the configuration. So SQL migrations assembly. Let's go a little bit up into the document and get the connection string from the configuration. So this is the hacking we are doing actually. It's a little bit guesswork, deduction. So connection string is going to be replaced with the code snippet which allows us to get the connection string from the application settings from this file. And this is how it's done in ASP.NET. Okay, so we added 2 plus 2 to get 4 actually. This is how we did it. We replaced all this add in memory resources config identity with add configuration store options, and options will come actually from the database. And operational store, this is the operational store, and this is the configuration store. All these things, the clients, scopes, and identity resources will come from the database. Now, the database can be built, but it's going to be empty, so we won't have any configuration. So that's why in this tutorial for IdentityServer4, they offer us actually to migrate, to copy everything what we have from our configuration file, but that's a little bit later. So let's build the tables. Let's build everything what is necessary to have IdentityServer running using the database, not in memory. .NET migrations. Okay, let me check my notes again. .NET package IdentityServer. Okay, that's done. In order to read the configuration from the database, okay, we did this. Add store options. Okay. See the database in database startup. This is the code, of course. We can first execute the migration. So let's do that. We will switch these two steps first. .NET 2 install global .NET-EntityFramework. We already did that, and we saw that .NET-EntityFramework is already installed. .NET Package Microsoft.EntityDesign, we have that. Don't forget to add using statements. Okay, that's fine. Now we can, can we? Yes, we can. We can build a database. Entity migration. Okay, let's build the tables. Actually, not the database, but the tables. Let's do the migrations. On this one, let's go back. Actually, what I did in this notes, .NET EntityFramework migrations at data migrations identity server persistent. Yeah, I guess this is the right statement. So what I did in my notes, actually, I created a roadmap for myself just with ideas which I had. Of course, as you can see, I'm improvising and I'm changing all this order in front of you, but still, this probably is gonna work. So data migrations, we have the migrations which are coming right now from another assembly. So that's why we had to do this magic here. Migrations assembly, type of blah, 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 blah. Okay, this reflection. Okay, and we have to do the second migration, which again can be copied from this tutorial. As you can see, everything what I'm using, all the sources, I have references to them. I'm not giving you only the fish, I'm telling you how to fish. Okay, so .NET EntityFramework migrations, because tomorrow you have to build this yourself. The thought process is the most valuable of this tutorial, not the size of the tutorial. Configuration. You can argue that this can be set much faster. Okay, but this also, as I said, I think has this value. If I'm only the guy who is watching this tutorial, I don't care. .NET Entity Framework migrations add initial identity server configuration migration. Okay, this is for the configuration tables. Let's take a look with SSMS, the database. Let's see the tables. Let's see everything. So we will be ready actually to run our IdentityServer4, getting the configuration from the database, but the configuration is empty right now. So we will populate it, we will seed it with data. We will transfer everything what we had in configuration so we don't have to do it manually. Where was our database? This is the one. So tables, look at how many tables do we... Oh, we don't have tables here. Okay, so that's fine. Yeah, of course, I didn't run update database, so no wonder we don't have it. So this is one of the dead ends I'm talking about, but we have the migrations. So if I run update database, all these migrations will be applied. Configuration database, persistent database, and the tables will be built. Not even gonna do that, because if you read here, migrations overview, you will learn that the migrations can be done programmatically. Let me go here probably. Create your database scheme, apply migrations, look at this, with from to idempotent SQL, which means that how many times you run it, it doesn't change anything if it's not necessary. Command line tools, apply migrations at runtime. This is what we're gonna do. Actually, this is what is done in this tutorial, and this is what we're gonna do. Create builder, blah, 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 blah. And why is done this way? Very simple, because we want to copy everything what we had in our configuration file and seed the database with it. So this is what we are gonna do. We are gonna add this I remember that there were errors into this method, so that's why what I'm gonna do actually is I'm gonna copy this from our identity server ASP.NET identity. I'm gonna copy this from my startup here. Identity, initialize database. Look at this. This is what I'm gonna do now. I may put this code into the description so you don't have to wonder what to do. And look what we did. In the request pipeline, the first thing we do is we call this method, which actually checks if the configuration database is empty, and if it's empty, it creates the tables, it seeds them, all this kind of stuff. Okay, so configure, go back to the startup. We did the necessary changes, so the configuration and the rest will come from the database. Let's go down here. Public void configure. Okay, this is the request pipeline. To entity, okay, let me add the necessary using statement. Persistent GradDB context. Let me see where it's coming from. Using IdentityServer4 EntityFramework context. Okay, so the context comes from the NuGet package manager. This comes from LinkU. To entity comes from IdentityServer4 EntityFramework mappers. And that's it, I guess. Okay, we'll see. When we run the application, the tables will be created into the database and the information will be seeded into the suitable tables. In order to do that, we have to call this method. Initialize database, and after that we will be ready to run it. Let me look at my notes so I won't forget anything. I missed this for a migration, blah 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 blah. This is, yeah, see the database in startup from config cs, change the stores in the startup, we did that, see the database, and after that do the migrations. We did first the migrations, and after that we did the code for seeding. Now, what is that now? .NET-ef migrations. Okay, those are the migrations. Now we have to run the applications. Actually, there are not too many steps here. Now, when we run the application, initialize database will be called. And let me see what it does actually. It says service scope, app application service, get service, iService scope factory, create scope. Okay, that's fine. Service scope, service provider, get required service, persistent GradDB context. Okay, this is the context for the tables which provide the configuration for IdentityServer4. Database migrate. Okay, let me look at here what it says about the migrations. Look at it's exactly the same. At runtime, host, create builder, blah blah, scope, host service create scope, DB scope, service provider get required service, application DB context, or in our case it's another context, and after that we just have to say database migrate. Here they're chained. As you can see, we don't have an extra variable, especially explicitly created for this type of operations which we're doing right now. They just chain everything and it's in one line, in one row. Okay, so var context service, they do the same here for the configuration DB context. And after that, they check the context client any. Here, the seeding happens. Otherwise, here migrate. This migration is going to create a database. This also is going to create the database. And after that, context clients, any client, if config clients, look at this. Now it's looking into this file config, where our configuration for IdentityServer4 comes from, and it populates actually the database with API scopes, where are our clients, any config identity resources, and here we go, the clients. Okay, so all this information, the clients information and everything else, will be transferred to the database. Okay, all I have to do is just try to start our application and let's hope that it's gonna work. If not, we'll take advantage of this as well and figure out why it's not working. Okay, debug, start new instance, and let's see what happens. Let me see here the output eventually. Okay, let's keep our fingers crossed and hopefully this is gonna work right now. Okay, voila. So now we can click here. Let's click left and right. This is the login which comes from ASP.NET Identity. We can register as well. If you remember, the URL is register, or if you don't remember, you click here on the register as a new user. We can register. We can take a look at the tables. SMS. Let's look at the tables. I will register. The registration validation email will be sent to me. If you don't know how to do that, look at the previous tutorial, previous lection. I will confirm my registration and I will have a user. Okay, databases. Okay, so look at our database, which is the last one. Tables. This time I expect to have a lot of tables. Okay, so here we go. Those are the migrations. It's a service table needed from Entity Framework. API resources claims. This comes from IdentityServer4 API. Here we have ASP.NET roles, ASP.NET roles claims. This comes from ASP.NET Identity. The rest of the tables are for IdentityServer4. Look how many tables does it need. And these tables, persistent grant, are also coming from persistent grants. This also is coming from our ASP.NET Identity. Okay, so we have quite a lot of tables. Let me look at the clients. Those are the applications which we have configured initially in our config file. Now they should be here into the database. Yes, we have 3 clients. We have a console application, we have MVC application, we have JavaScript application. Client, console, MVC, JavaScript. Okay, so the clients are there. I have nothing else to look at here. Let me register. Now I'm gonna put my real email. I'm gonna use a pass $123. Again, pass $123 $. I will register. Now one email should be sent to me using SendGrid. As I said, look at the previous tutorial, and I am immediately redirected to, as you can see, to 5001. This is a diagnostic. Okay, so let me check my email. Okay, let me check my email. I should be receiving one email. Yeah, here we go. Look at this. What it says: IdentityServer4 with MS Identity. Please confirm your account by clicking here. Now, if you look at SSMS, let's take a look what's going on. You will see that there is Toyan, but his email hasn't been confirmed yet, hasn't been verified yet. Let's take a look. Let's take advantage of the fact that we have our identity server running on our machine. So database, look at here now. We have this one, tables, and let's look at the identity resources. Where is this? ASP.NET users. Show me the top 1000 records. I could have say let me edit, but whatever. So look, the registration just happened. Stoyan, but email confirmed. Look at this, the field is 0. So now I'm gonna go back and click here to confirm email. It comes again. Look at this, from identity account, so it's ASP.NET identity. But the most important thing is that I have the UI. As I said, if I need fine granular, for some reason, if I need to very fine control the UI, I can do that just by scaffolding the ASP.NET identity. And let me say again, here in the startup, I can comment out add default UI. So all the UI will be denied, will be hidden. Only whatever I scaffold actually will be available. Right now I'm allowing everything. So confirm email. Let me check here just for fun. How can I refresh here? Okay, can I refresh it this way? Okay, I'm gonna do edit top 200 errors, rows, sorry about that. SQL level. Let me close this one, edit, and if you look at email confirmed, you see that it's true right now. Or if I say 1000, we'll see 1 probably. Yeah, email confirmed 1. The email has been confirmed. So now I can run the API, which is the resource which is protected from my identity server right now, from my security token service. I'll try to run this one, which is running on 6001. Okay, not allow it to access anything right now. And I can run one of my clients, for example, the MVC client. Let me run the MVC client. And since I'm logged in as a Stoyan, I'll try to access. It's running on 5002. I have been redirected to 5001. I'll be redirected back to 5002. As you can see, all this happened. And voila, here we go. My MVC client went to the identity server so that Stoyan actually is logged in, and I have been sent back. Okay, so now I can show you how I can call the API. This is the API, which is a third party. It's not part of my MVC. I'm accessing the API, which is guarded by identity server, and I can log out. Only the catch here is that logout actually will log me out from the MVC, is not gonna log me out from the identity server. But there are so many use cases. Maybe this is exactly what we want. Look at this, log out. You have successfully logged out of the application. But as you can see, if I want to log out from the identity server, I have to say log out. Yes, I would log out. You're not logged out. You're now logged out. So that's it. I think this concludes the tutorial. Everything is into SQL Server right now, LocalDB. What I'm gonna do next is put the project into a container, have another container which is MSSQLServer, and these two containers actually will create this STS, security token service, and I will deploy it as a containers. Create the image and whatever. So the images can be created in 3 different ways: with build command, with commit command, and also with tag. Actually, it's not creating really the image, but just renaming it. Okay, so the containers actually are created from the images with run. Okay, run a container. We're gonna spin the container. So this service will be the pillar, will be the first one, which is gonna protect the rest of the services. And we are gonna use Ocelot as an API gateway. We are gonna use as well the Rabbit MS as a message queue for advanced message queue protocol. So I'm very excited. It's a long ride, but it's a lot of fun. It's a long journey. But as you can see, it's a fun actually to hack. All we did is only in startup, we installed one package, which was IdentityServer4 entity framework. After that, we did the changes in the startup. So the ASP.NET identity works with the LocalDB. We changed the connection string. Of course, the order could be different. After that, we changed the code, which allows our identity server to take the configuration and to work with LocalDB. This is the bridge between the identity server and the ASP.NET identity. We allow it all the UIs from ASP.NET identity, but as I said, if we need a granular control, we can do this with scaffolding. In the previous tutorial, I showed you how to do that. Actually, I show it to myself as well, because as you can see right now, I'm discovering everything in the magical forest. And that's it. We have external STS providers, as you can see in the face of Google, and identity server demo. Here we go. And that's it. Not gonna go deeper into this rabbit hole anymore. We have so many rabbit holes to look at. Okay, so that concludes the tutorial. Thank you very much.